Hello and welcome. In this episode, we look at the history of media malfeasance from the Iraq War to Russiagate to COVID 19 to the ongoing war in Ukraine, and we ask ourselves what has been the impact on public trust this has had. I'm your host, Martin Kay. Glad to have you here with me.
From Iraq to Russia to COVID-19, a history of media malfeasance and its consequences. According to a study by Rasmussen Reports, in 2021, 83% of Americans considered fake news to be a concern, while 56%, mostly Republicans and independents, believed that the media were genuinely the enemy of the people. Another 2022 research conducted by the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism found that the United States media has the least amount of trustworthiness, with only 26% of respondents from 46 countries having confidence in it. How did the U.S. legacy media end up losing public trust? To ordinary global citizens, the answer is quite simple. Irish MP Boyd Barrett echoed the average Joe's sentiment when he said, Americans were bombarded with false or misleading information concerning Iraqi weapons of mass destruction and connections to al-Qaeda. This was clearly in reference to the circulating press reports at the start of Iraq invasion of 2003. The mainstream news media's role in terms of sensationalizing and uncritically conveying relevant official claims to the public was key to the success of that propaganda campaign, Barrett added. These concerns held up, even prompting the New York Times to conduct a post-mortem of how it covered the Iraq War. It was an admission of journalistic malfeasance. Where the people have mandated the media to investigate and report on matters of public interest for the purpose of holding power accountable, the Times failed along with every other media house. It is quite obvious to the rational thinker that relying heavily on official sources, legacy news organizations run the risk of repeating and reinforcing false information or baseless assertions, which may have been initiated by, or exploited by actors closely associated with the political or intelligence establishments. But corporate media doesn't fancy towing that line. Instead, the media would rather operate as a government advocate than run the risk of stricter legislation. After all, the government takes the role of primary regulator of the media in many countries. The political elite have the power to create laws and sanctions that harm the media. With this in mind, in order to survive, media corporations will lean on major sources of news such as government spokespersons. While corporate journalists figure this enhances the credibility of their work, they wind up only repeating information framed in the favor of those in authority. Further exposure of this reality came in 2019 with the collapse of Trump-Russia scandal after it became clear that the outcome of Robert Mueller's investigation would not lead to an impeachment. The Russiagate scandal exposed how the Clinton campaign's malevolent smears on 45 was passed through intelligence organizations, including the FBI. Despite failing to perform essential fact-checking, the FBI shared the unverified allegations with the media, portraying them as part of an authorized investigation. The media today remains broadly uncritical of how the government exploited their reach to disseminate malicious propaganda against a sitting president. Bob Woodward of The Washington Post has since said, news coverage of the Russia inquiry wasn't handled well and I think viewers and readers had been cheated. I urge newsrooms to walk down the painful road of introspection. When COVID-19 first broke out in Wuhan, China, in late 2019, there was much hesitancy on the part of world authorities to acknowledge the origin of the pandemic. It's hard to imagine what was unclear about it when your average Joe at the corner pub was saying the contagion was the result of a lab leak. This claim was refuted by the political class and the leaders of the scientific community. As far as they were concerned, the countless deaths being witnessed could only have been by an occurrence in nature, and not anything to do with government-funded science research. Claims to the contrary were reduced to the work of racist, right-wing conspiracy theorists. This is the unfortunate way the media went about reporting on a public health crisis when trust was very crucial. One could even argue that this negligence on the part of the Fourth Estate is what catalyzed the spread of COVID misinformation on social media. The lethal symbiosis between the media and governments against what is in the best interest of the people has carried on with the border conflict in Europe between Ukraine and Russia. The Nord Stream pipelines running between Russia and Germany were blown up in September 2022. Again, world leaders concurred that this had to be the work of sabotage by a state actor. The only flaw in the official reports was no one was explicitly implicated. The Western media chose to go against the standard criteria of means, motive and opportunity which would have made the US the culprit, and instead blamed Russia while referring to European government sources. What average Joe at the corner pub had figured out before his whiskey bottle ran out, the highly resourced media was reading from another government tip pointing the finger to a powerful pro-Ukrainian non-state actor. Changing attitudes in media haven't taken a turn for the worse these 20 years absent of causation. The media is the first source of information for the average Joe, but it doesn't help media credibility if the average Joe, 20 bottles in his wine, sees every major story much clearer than the trusted professionals do. Are media outlets allowing political pressures to sway their editorial judgment? Or is it purely the result of overriding business factors? Whatever it is, the lifeblood of the media's relationship with the people hangs on telling the truth, by being open and honest at all times.
I'd like to know what you thought about today's topic. Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you appreciate such content, consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a thumbs up. I look forward to seeing you again in the next one. Take care.